Thank you all. Thank you, and welcome to this conversation. I'm really looking forward to this. These are renowned kids from the Bronx, all of them. And they're all immensely talented, and I'm here to show you can become talented just marrying someone from Arlene, the book, just so people have an idea what the book is, how did it start? Is this something you've always wanted to do? Because I want to find out something about you tonight I didn't know.
Let's see. What can I tell you that you don't already know? But for the sake of everyone else, the book actually started as a lark. I went back to the building that you know very well, the Mayflower, which is in the northeast section of the Bronx. But I went back with the CEO of CRU, Mickey Drexler, and Mickey also grew up in the building. But I didn't know him at the time.
You grew up in the same building?
In the same building, 96 apartments. Mickey is 11 years younger than I am. And we went back to just share memories. And as he was talking, he pointed to his windows. And I pointed to my windows. They were opposite one another.
She could have married him instead of me.
That's right.
Jeez.
So as we talked, I thought, this is very beautiful. I know Mickey at this level of his achievement, but where did it all begin? It began in the Bronx. And so I thought, with that, I know a number of people, Regis for one, who also grew up in the Bronx.
Arlene searched far and wide for people from the Bronx. Regis lives down the hall from us. He's always bothering me when I get the paper in the morning.
Got a lot to say, you know? Incidentally, where are you from?
I was born in Manhattan.
Big deal!
Boy, they turned against me as soon as I said that. So how many people from the Bronx did you finally talk to?
Okay, so ultimately, I talked to 64 other people from the Bronx, and they included people like Colin Powell, Al Pacino, Daniel Libeskind, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Mary Higgins Clark, of course, Regis Philbin, Mickey Drexler, Milton Glaser, Jules Pfeiffer, and on and on and on, and covered 7 decades of people living in the Bronx. Got to the guys at TATS CRU, fantastic graffiti artists.
What do they do?
Thank you.
You know,
who are these guys?
Okay, now you guys are world-renowned artists, and you started
in the
doing
Bronx,
what?
Yeah, painting subways here in New York City.
But we moved on from that.
We moved on.
You now paint trains around the world?
Actually, yeah, we have.
I'm really interested because so many of everybody in this book is accomplished. Not everybody is famous. Most of them are, but they're all accomplished. What drove you? What made you achieve what you did, coming from what at the time was, I think, a tough neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, it was just the art was our passion. I mean, it was pretty much growing up in New York City in a time where there wasn't much in the Bronx. At that time, you know, the South Bronx had been burnt down. A lot of people had left the Bronx. And it was just, we always had a passion for art. And it was just that drive alone that, you know, brought us to where we are today. But it wasn't even a vision in that sense. It was just we believed in what we did so much that didn't matter whether it was illegal, how we got our supplies. It was just.
You know, Regis feels the same way.
No, I mean, like Bai was saying, we grew up in an era where there weren't any art programs, and you know, we actually had a Boys and Girls Club near where I grew up. I grew up on Longwood Avenue and Southern Boulevard. And we're taking the train home together.
No, we can get lots of applause tonight just saying street names.
Streets, right? No, but in my neighborhood, we didn't have much, you know, we didn't have any programs. to, you know, to keep us busy. So I was always interested in art, so were the guys. And when we met, it's a funny story. We met in James Monroe High School. High School.
This is terrific. I can't believe this.
We met in of all places. I was a freshman, and we met in a major art class. And
isn't that great?
Over 32 years ago, something like that.
BG, were you smitten with art from the beginning, from the very beginning?
Yes, man. I remember I saw my sister one time drawing, and ever since I never looked back.
How old were you?
I was like 4 years old when I actually started doing art, and I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like growing up in the Bronx, you know, seeing the burning of the South Bronx, seeing everything. My mom always took time to buy me, you know, for Christmas, you know, she would buy me art supply. And later she would buy me coloring by colors, you know, or anything that was dealing with any type of painting. So I think because of that reason, you know,
so your parents encouraged you? Your parents encouraged you?
Yeah, my parents every day, man. My mother and my father really like went in and, you know, a little whipping here and there, you know, because I was misbehaving, but, you know, the art was always there.
Here's one of your iconic pictures.
That's nicer.
What are you, a wise guy?
I'll show you. This is, I don't know how far back you can see it. This is an award-winning piece of work, isn't it?
That's located on Simpson Street and Westchester Avenue in the Bronx.
And in each letter of the Bronx is a different scene from around the Bronx.
You have botanical gardens, you have a black and white photo of kids playing stickball, which basically doesn't exist anymore. Bronx Zoo, you have the train, the hip-hop era, you know, with the b-boy, the turntable.
So were you commissioned to do this, or did you just sneak up in the middle of the night?
No, we have permission.
No, we have
we got permission this time around.
We weren't commissioned. This was just something that actually, BG grew up in this neighborhood, so, and we've always painted this wall. And we've been painting so many years that and it was just something that we decided to do on our own. I mean, we've been fortunate to travel around the world, and wherever we go, we always have that Bronx pride with us. So we was like, how come we never do anything at home? So this was what.
Well, how old were you guys when you met and formed this little group?
We had to be teens, 15,
16, like that?
Yeah, no, I was
How did you come up with the name TATS CRU? TATSCRU.
It was, it originally started TAT. It was Top Artistic Talent, Tough Ass Teens. That kind of.
Teenagers are tough.
Yeah, right.
It was more of an acronym, and we would always be creative and just change what it meant.
Yeah, the S.
Are you allowed to say in public what the acronym is from?
No, not now, not here.
Yeah.
Tell me something, Regis.
What is it?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. This is what drove these guys. What the hell drove you? What was your dream? What did you dream of as a kid?
You know what? Honest to God, I had no dreams, no desires. I mean, we had Bronx Park a block away from my house. We'd go down there. They had 2 baseball fields, a softball field. I mean, they had it all. I mean, it was a great park when you think about it.
Yeah, terrific. But okay, you have you had a dream, and I bet it's still alive in another form, about wanting to be Bing Crosby.
Well, that's true.
At what age?
I was getting to that, but...
Oh, don't interrupt him. He likes to take 20, 30 minutes. And that,
Alan Alda.
We're not racing to the first commercial.
No, I know. No, but you asked me, did I have anything in my mind?
Yeah.
No, I really had nothing. But I'll tell you one thing. When I was either 6 or 7 or 8 years old, I began listening to the top radio station in town. I believe it probably still is, WNEW. So I'm listening to it, and from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, every night, they had Crosby singing. And we were in the middle of the Depression, the Great Depression. It was all through 30s and into the 40s. And the songs that they were writing and Crosby was delivering was to cheer you up. And that's the way I felt after I heard him. I really felt terrific.
Like wrap your troubles in dreams?
Wrap your troubles in dreams. Go ahead, next.
I didn't mean to make you sing it.
Thought you were looking for something. I don't know what the hell. So anyway, so I kind of fell in love with Bing Crosby. I thought he was great, and he was the only one that all through my days at Our Lady of Solace on Morris Park Avenue, or Cardinal Hayes down at 150th Street. And even when I went to Notre Dame, well, before I could get away, my mother, my Italian mother, would say to me, "What is it? What do you want to be when you grow up? It's got to be something important. You want to be a lawyer? You want to be a doctor? What is it?" How could I tell her I wanted to be Bing Crosby? She'd kill herself. So I said nothing. I said, "Mom, I don't know, but I'm going to Notre Dame, and when I see you there for the graduation, I'll know." I go to Notre Dame, it's all about football, it's this, it's that. I never gave it a second thought until 3 days before I graduated. I said, "My God, my mother's coming. I've got to say something." So I think, yeah, Bing Crosby. I'm going to just tell her, "I want to be Bing Crosby," Mom. Like an idiot. So she comes with my father, and we walk across the campus, and I say, "Don't say a word to me, Mom, because I'm going to tell you what I want." And I had a guy in there, Gus, who had rehearsed with me a couple of days. So she comes in with my father, Gus, I cue him, and I sing, "Every time it rains, pennies from heaven, pennies from heaven." My mother's looking at me saying, what did he say? And my father, who was a boxer and a Marine, and he was making fists with his hands. It wasn't a good night at all. And so then I'm thinking, oh, for God's sakes, Bing Crosby's the giant. Forget it. Mom, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to go into the service now. We're at war, and so we'll see. So I went into the service, and I met a couple of Marine majors who were single guys when they were fighting in the First World War, the Second World War, rather. This is the Third World War we're in right now. Tough guys. Anyway, I went to say goodbye to them, and this last guy was a killer. So he looked at me and he said, "What are you going to do with the rest of your life?" I said, "Major, I don't know. I see television, but I've got nothing to offer. I have never studied anything about it. He said, "Don't you know you can have anything you want in this life? You've only got to want it bad enough. Now, do you want it?" I said, "Major, you don't understand. There's nothing I know about it. They'll throw me right out." He said, "Do you get it?" I said, "All right, Major, I'll get it. I'll go." And I got in the car and I went up to Hollywood, and it's a long, long story.
Well, we only have a day and a half.
But here's the story, wise guy. I start out, I'm delivering things around Hollywood. I'm doing all the stuff. And then finally I get a break, getting in front of the camera and doing things. And one night, Joey Bishop sees me. Joey Bishop has a chance to
Joey Bishop was a big comic at the time.
That's right. Yeah. A big comic at the time, hung with Sinatra and all those guys. And he was going up against Johnny Carson at 11:30 at night, but he wanted someone besides himself alone, like Johnny had at McMahon. So he sees me on TV, calls me up, I go in, I have a meeting with him, and I get the job. Now we start the first day, and the producer comes to me and says, "Go get Joey, he's very nervous, and take him for a walk." So I go see Joey Bishop. I said, Joey, you want to go for a walk? Are you crazy? I've got a TV show. We've got to fight Johnny. We've got this. We've got that. No. I leave. 5 minutes later, he's knocking on the door. Let's go. So we walked every day for 3 years up Vine Street. Are you listening to me?
No, that's. I was just thinking that walk took about as long as this story.
It's a long story. We'll be done by maybe 12 o'clock. I'm not sure. No, this is real quick.
No, you're getting to the good part. I know this story.
Then it was nice seeing you.
Tell them they never heard it.
I'm gonna tell the story. Yes. Every day we walked up Vine Street, you know, from Fountain Avenue, and then went over to, what was it, the third, I forget the name of the street. We came back, it was a 45-minute walk every day. And I had to do all the talking because he didn't talk. And one day I had nothing to talk about, and I said, oh my God, I'm gonna go crazy with him. We started walking. And I said to him, what did you want to be when you were a kid? He said, when I was 10 years old, on the street corners of Philadelphia, I would stand and tell jokes to people walking by, and they would fall down laughing. I wanted to be a comedian, and I became one. And he did, and a pretty good one. So we continued to walk, and he finally said something to me. He said, what about you? What did you want to be? So like an idiot, I say, well, you know, when I was a little kid, I used to listen to Bing Crosby on the radio, and I just thought for a minute, you know, it'd be nice if I could be somebody like Bing Crosby. That ended that. We finish our walk, 3 months go by, and Bing Crosby's a guest on the show.
And here he is.
There he is right there. That's his wife. There's Bishop, and there's Regis.
Oh, wow.
So I tell Joey that, and Bing's on the show, and they want Bing to sing. And so Bishop says to him, you know, Regis would love to hear you sing, Bing. Sings anything to us. So Bing Crosby sings a song to us, and it was just great. And so easy, you know. We go to a commercial break, we come out of it, Bishop says, so Regis, you wanted to be a Bing Crosby singer. You knew all of his songs, yeah? Pick out a song and sing it to him. It's like singing to these three guys, you know what I mean? But Crosby was there, the show was on, and I sang Pennies from Heaven. And Bing jumped in, boom, 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 boom. He was just kidding with me. He was just great. And the next day, I got a telegram from a Mercury Records. Would you like to do
a record, an album?
An album of Bing Crosby. So I took it to Joey Bishop. I said, look at this, Joey. Look. Bishop looked at it and said, somebody's playing a joke on you. I think he was angry. And he tore it up. He tore it up and threw it down. Don't listen to that. I said, maybe he's right. The next day, the guy calls up from Chicago. Well, are you going to do it or not? I said, yeah, I'll try it. And so that's how.
And that's how you became Bing Crosby. That's good. Bravo.
Very funny.
Great story.
The story's in the book, by the way.
Yeah, it's a lovely story in the book. Guys, did you do this?
No, BG painted that.
Yeah, that's a painting that I created on a canvas.
I don't know if you can see it in the back. There's a kid leaping onto a pile of mattresses.
Kids. Yeah.
And in the back is your tag, right?
Yeah. Yes.
BG, on the wall.
Right, on the left-hand side, in yellow.
Is this a picture of your life as a child playing in the?
Yeah, that could be something like looking at the back of my window, you know, like when the era of, in the 70s, when people just started moving out.
Because of the fire.
The fire, you know, burning up the South Bronx. And, you know, this is something like I created. It took me like a year to create. Everything is all done with spray paint and paint markers. So that's why you see like all those little dots on it.
Paint markers.
Marker,
yeah, paint markers and spray
Oil-based
paint.
markers, yeah.
So there's no paintbrush. It's all spray paint and just paint markers.
Wow, you actually sprayed it out of the thing?
You know, this is you painting the
Yes,
Mona
me
Lisa.
with hair.
We're here. Yeah,
How do you do the Mona Lisa or the picture you did before that has so many gradations in color with spray cans? Because they only have a few colors of spray, right?
No, actually, nowadays they have like a total of like 10 different shades. Like if you need
each color,
a blue,
Of each color.
you have like a lighter blue to the dark blue to a dark red to a lighter red.
But don't you need, like for the Mona Lisa, I
Yeah.
swear to God, I think he used more than 10 colors.
Yeah, they use more than 10 colors.
10
so-
shades for each color.
Yeah, so, so you have 10 shades for each color.
for each
Oh, I
color,
didn't
so it
understand.
works very good. So, you know, at first I start with the eyes, and then I just work out with spray paint. So after like 4 or 6 hours later, you see what you see.
So do you change the tones at all by
By
layering
changing
it, putting
the
one
colors.
layer on top of another?
yeah, I would kind of like just add stuff onto it. Like you
And
start
you see
off.
through each one?
Yeah, well, we've been doing it for so long. We kind of developed a technique where we can like like building layers, like sculpting sort of.
Yeah.
We start with just a black outline, then we start cutting away and leaving, you know, the image, the desired image that we want. So.
What
You
was
know-
the biggest picture that you made? The most money, let's put it that way.
The most money. I mean, several projects. I mean, we've done nationwide campaigns for different corporations. We've done
No kidding,
five-story
different
buildings.
corporations, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
We've
We've
done-
done 5-story buildings in Poland. We've been fortunate to travel and do
Yeah,
work all over.
Yeah, because of what we've done, and every now and then I catch those moments where you have to step back and say, what the heck am I doing here? It's like, you know, I was part of this group from the Bronx that, you know, used to get chased away, you know, painting on handball courts. Now we're Board of Ed vendors, or and we do mural classes with kids, and then we've been pretty fortunate enough to start traveling early on. In 1985, I think, was the first time we've went to England, and we spent a month out there. And then since then, we've been to places like, you know, China,
Everywhere,
Israel, Morocco.
Did you
Poland,
sing any songs when you?
Pennies from
I had my Pennies from Heaven.
sang
I had
Pennies
it on
from
my,
Heaven.
iTunes.
That helped a lot.
You know what's so wonderful about this story, that you were kids from the Bronx from a certain period, and the people in your book, Arlene, cover each decade going
Yeah.
back to the childhoods of people in their 90s to people now in their 20s.
Right, and you reminded me, there's someone who was interviewed, his name is Dion DiMucci, and he was Dion and the Belmonts, and he also grew up, he's much older than you guys, but he was a tough kid, and he described, you know, you reminded me when you were thrown out of places, he would climb over the fence to the zoo in order to see the animals. He describes them 5 feet away from him. No, elephants and rhinoceros and giraffe. He said, where else can you do that? But it's very interesting. There's a rough edge that a lot of people experience in the Bronx, and then there's a whole range of other things.
An appreciation of beauty, of nature. And it's not hard to appreciate nature. People are surprised that how much of the Bronx is parkland.
Yeah, 25% of the Bronx is parkland.
Is that right?
More parkland than in any other boroughs.
Wow.
And we grew up, as you say, near the Bronx Park.
Right.
I used to, in May, every May, this was a seasonal thing, a light bulb went off in my head. May is when the violets come out. And I would go down to the Bronx River, to the banks of the Bronx River, and pick little bouquets of violets and bring them home, put them in a jelly jar vase that we had. And there are so many, there's a tremendous variety in just the geography of the Bronx, along with the neighborhoods, which started out as little villages historically.
But I was struck, guys, by your stories in the book of being creative, having to be creative in the play that you engaged in as kids, because you didn't have the toys, you didn't have the electronics that they have now and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, for us,
I used to play with rocks.
Played with rocks.
Yeah. Listen, I think what's the comparison from the way we grew up and the way the kids grew up nowadays is like we can use our imagination, and I believe everyone growing up in neighborhoods like ours, you know, had to use your imagination to, you know, be creative with what you have. I mean, we would start out the morning with everyone chipping in for a Spalding. And you know how many games we would play throughout the day just for the Spalding? You did everything from stickball to pitching in to off the stoop, and you know, you invented games. It was just,
well, what about
until somebody roofed the ball, then everybody had to go. Then it was over.
You played games. You played games that I'd never heard of, like jumping from one elevator to another. Just describe that.
That was bio.
We used to open up the elevator shaft and ride on top of the elevator all day and get bored and jump on top of the other one. It was just,
believe this?
that's what it was.
Jesus, sounds like a lot of fun.
living miracle. He's alive to tell the tale.
Yeah. I mean, did anybody get hurt doing that?
No. I mean, it was just so common to us. It was like you knew
And these
what
were all,
to do.
you also played in abandoned buildings.
Yeah.
too,
Yes,
right? So like
that was like my recreation day, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, okay, Mom, see you later. And then we all meet up in like building 923, Simpson Street, and that would be a hideout. You know, we would jump up the windows into mattresses. Yeah. So it was like an entertainment. And
didn't you fall accidentally out of a window?
I fell out.
Yeah.
It was an abandoned building. I grabbed the frame, and the whole frame came out.
Oh my God!
But I just landed in a pile of rubble.
Thank God there was rubble there. You know,
and a little mattress too to help.
How did I'd love this in Arlene's book, Just Kids from the Bronx. You tell about how you knew there was going to be a fire in the building. How would you know?
Fire?
Yeah.
Oh man!
When you lit the match,
people will be screaming. The match will be on the floor.
And somehow the fire was
Nicer. You described
Well, I remember,
it in the
we
story.
had like I had a friend that lived across the street, and we would go visit them, and half of his hallway was boarded up because there was half the building caught fire. Mm-hmm. So, and you would hear, like there would be nights you're at home watching television, and you would hear the fire trucks coming from far away, and everyone's out the window, and it was just that era. It was just, there was no money in the city. Everyone was abandoning, you know, their properties and burning them out just for the insurance money, and the families that were left there. And you know, for us, like even in our building, like the actual building was like a little community within itself. Everyone had open doors. They would send you to neighbor's house to get sugar, to go get, you know, rice. So it was like a little community. But once the property owners started like leaving and abandoning these properties and figured out that it was worth more burnt out for the insurance money than it was actually, you know, getting money to maintain.
So when the landlord was ready to burn down his building to get the insurance money,
it was.
They do, and I read one of you, I forget which one of you said in the book, that when the landlord stopped collecting rent, you knew
that was a sure sign. It was like he stopped coming around. Usually that was the sign. People were like, "Hey, have you seen the landlord? I haven't seen the landlord. I don't know. Should we move?" You know, it starts off like that. It's like,
but then the Bronx has lately. People remember that period of the Bronx when it was burning, and the phrase "the Bronx is burning" and Fort Apache, the Bronx, they were sort of imprinted on people's minds around the world still to this day.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that it hasn't been like that for a long time.
Do you know how difficult it is to find an abandoned building? We actually were asked, "Do you know where there are any abandoned buildings?" And we were like,
Not only that, I mean, we have to remember the South Bronx is one geographic portion of the Bronx. So even in the very bad times, there were still very viable, stable neighborhoods.
Yes.
And now when you go through the South Bronx, it's entirely different. Yeah. And the other neighborhoods are interesting. I find them fascinating.
I found something interesting in the book that I don't know if you'd agree with. It seemed to me that in the beginning, decades and decades ago, a number of people wanted to get out of the Bronx. Their dream was to make it big someplace else. And by the end of the book, you have people in their 20s staying in the Bronx happily, gladly, that it's drawing them, like the kid who you end the book on.
Yeah, Eric Zeidler. 23, he's 24 now, a naturalist, herpetologist, went to the Bronx High School of Science, and found out that the best place to go for what he was interested in college was in Kansas. So he went to Kansas, and unfortunately was bitten by a rattlesnake in the artery there. And it was very serious. They helicoptered him to the nearest big hospital where they could try to save him. And on the way there, the professor, who also happened to have been from the Bronx, that was an odd coincidence, said to him, you know, Eric, kids from the Bronx don't go to Kansas to die. So he didn't die. And in the hospital, he was a major celebrity. Oh. And the nurses would come to him, congratulations. But it had nothing to do with the fact that he lived. It was because of his Bronx accent. They would hand the phone to him. Would you speak to my brother?
That's funny.
And Eric, by the way, he discovered a huge population of snapping turtles in the Bronx River, and labeled them, tagged them, and contributed to the science. And when he was a kid, he thought, could I work in Africa, South America? And after he did this work in the Bronx, he thought, no, this is where I should be. This is where the work is. So I thought that was very interesting, that he knows that there are places in the Bronx for naturalists to explore and discover and contribute.
The Bronx has gone through so many changes that you reflect in the childhoods of the people, just focusing on their childhoods. I love what happens after the war, because during the war, all the companies that made cars were making tanks and trucks for the war effort. So they weren't making many cars. Yeah. So the kids had the streets to themselves. There weren't many cars in the streets, right?
Yeah, we all played, even I as a girl played in the street or on the sidewalk. I mean, you went out of your house for the most part. I mean, people in Riverdale claim they didn't go out in the street.
Didn't want to be seen out there.
That's the only place.
As a matter of fact, we have a mutual friend who, when he moved to Riverdale as a young man, thought he was moving to Westchester. When he found out it was the Bronx, he moved out.
So I was aiming toward that other idea, which I'd lost completely.
No, that's okay, because I'm just reminded of Mary Higgins Clark, who is a little older than I am. And Mary Higgins Clark said the best thing. She said, people just don't get it. There are 3 places in the world with a "the" in front of it. Okay. The Vatican, The Hague, and the Bronx.
I wonder how that started, the Bronx, you know.
The Bronx. Well, okay, I'll tell you what I know, but it may not be true. In 1639, there was a Scandinavian who got a charter from the Dutch East or West Indies Company. His name was Jonas Bronck, B-R-O-N-C-K. And he farmed 500 acres or so in the Mott Haven section. Right. When you went to visit Mr. Bronck, and his family, you were going to see the Bronx.
Oh, I see. And it stuck.
That's one of the
Yeah.
explanations that I've had. But it may or may not be true. I don't know.
Well, what are you guys going to do next? Why don't you tell us now? Is there something coming up? Do you have a project?
You paint every day, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And are these mostly commissions?
A lot of it is, yeah. I mean, we've.
So would somebody commission you to paint their wall or what? Side of the building?
Different projects, it varies.
Yeah, they vary. We just finished doing a building down on 18th Street, the elevator landings. Then we did a pediatric center last night, like a kids ward. So it's images that make it.
What'd you put on the wall for the kids?
We did
Because I may go tonight.
images. Well, we did images of kids playing, like playing in the parks, and so
Good for you.
stuff that's because what it is in a lot of even in the school systems, what people have been realizing is that for so many years these buildings look like. They look so institutionalized. It's so cold, and like even the hospitals, they're just so one-colored, and so they invite artists like us to come over and, put some life into it and some color.
When you go to another country, do you lecture? Do you teach art? What do you do?
We do a little bit of everything.
We've done lectures, murals, we've exhibitions. I mean, each project varies. I mean, from Morocco, we were invited to a city called Azemmour, and pretty much we're given 2,000-3,000 spray cans and set loose in the city. And they were like, any wall that's white, you can paint.
No kidding.
And we're looking around
And it's
at
one of
this
the oldest
historic-looking buildings, and we
This
don't
is like
want
an
to paint
old
on anything.
city with walls, with the old walls around
Like
it.
the
And they were tired of seeing you.
They were like, "So what you
what
want?" I was
color
like,
did you use?
I don't want to touch nothing here.
Everything
It looks
available.
good. I'm like,
No, it was just because
Is
they
it
wanted
white?
to bring tourism to because it's so close
Yeah.
to Casablanca. It's maybe an hour and a half, so they wanted to encourage people to visit this particular city. So they brought a bunch of international artists.
You know what I was struck with so much, because you grew up at a time when the Bronx was going through hard times, and yet you found beauty in that period and a way to express the beauty of art and to reach the public. That was what was so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, when we started, we kind of did it for ourselves. It started off as a subculture here in New York City, and it's kind of like it was in a time where we were going through garbage strikes and subway strikes, and so it was kind of like we were left to run through the subway systems without. I mean, we didn't have the police force that you have nowadays, and there's we got away with a lot. So we were younger. So what ended up happening was because of that, I guess, we found something to kind of like, have for ourselves, and it was our thing. And
Now, some people, I'm sure at the time, and probably still, would think that you were defacing property, you were doing something illegal.
Only Regis thinks that. He told us backstage.
Did Regis mention that?
I think you're on to something.
No, I think it's real. If you don't mind bringing out your feelings about that, because you were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, and yet it changed your lives in a positive way.
Yes, it did, because I remember when, after we was doing like work for Coca-Cola and everything else, I remember, saying to these guys, we all three was talking, let's start this business. A graffiti business. Who wants to start a graffiti business? We didn't even know which way, like how to work it or how to start it. So I remember going, talking to my mom, because I was working as an engineer, and telling her, I'm gonna leave my job and I'm gonna be a graffiti artist. And then each one of us went to each house. And then next thing you know, it's like, we didn't know like which way to go,
Talk about
like who to see, who to follow. Like it was nobody and really doing graffiti company, so it was hard. So, the first thing is I remember, let's get some walls, and we were knocking people's, landlords and buildings. And they would look at us and we turn look, and we would be carrying the cans on in our hands. We want to paint your wall, and they'd be like, oh, no, not here. We don't want it. And we like, so after a while, it took a while.
Yeah.
No, I
know you want it.
I think what ended up happening was there's a changing of the guards that kind of happened in the early 90s. And it was people before then that didn't have an open mind to like this new art form. They kind of already made up their mind that no, they don't like it, period. And then, but with the changing of the guard, the people that were now in positions to employ our heads of art departments, principals, like people that can actually employ art, are looking and either grew up with this art form and are looking in their past and saying, wow, I saw some nice stuff, I wouldn't mind having that, as part of this project. And it's people like that throughout the years have been, reaching out to us. And
you were doing art in spite of the fact that
right, those people were saying
art
it wasn't.
sometimes in places where they didn't ask for it, but you were still doing art.
Yeah.
But you weren't out doing drugs or robbing people or killing people as some of your friends might have been doing.
Yeah. It's interesting. My focus was on age groups, basically, going through that arc of, decades. And as it turned out, after the fact, I realized there were 5 or 6 artists who are their stories represented in the book. TATS CRU, Milton Glaser, Danny Halbin, Jules Pfeiffer, Barbara Nessum, Myra Kalman. It's an amazing group of people, all with a different version of their art. But I'm especially taken with something that Milton Glaser said about his upbringing that I thought I'd like to read.
Oh, good. Read it. It is a little...
Okay, give me a moment to change glasses.
You just went past my page.
Okay. He's a wonderful graphic designer.
Mm-hmm. He did the famous I Heart New York.
Yeah.
He's responsible.
Yeah. And he describes his basic family and what it was like to him. My mother never ate with the rest of the family. My father, who had this dry cleaning store, would come home from work at about 8:15 at night. My sister, who at that point was still in grade school, would come home early and have something to eat. Everybody ate by themselves. Every once in a while, 2 would eat at the same time, but my mother was never seen eating. During the day, she was taking food from somewhere. It was very strange. My mother also cooked spaghetti in a very specific way. She would boil it for an hour until it had gotten gelatinous and lost its identity.
Oh, my God.
She'd toss Velveeta cheese in before the water had boiled off. Then she would demold it from the pot because it had been reduced to a kind of pudding. It was like the dome of St. Peter's. And after that, she'd slice it and fry it in chicken fat. In my teenage years, I went to an Italian restaurant for the first time. I asked for spaghetti. And when they brought me a plate of spaghetti, I said, no, I want spaghetti. Spaghetti!
Only in the Bronx, huh? Only in the Bronx.
Only in the Bronx.
I love the way people made their way in the Bronx, one way or another. David Yarnell.
Oh, David. This is also a close friend of ours who was brought up in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. David Yarnell became a lawyer and then a documentary filmmaker. So David, also a little older than I am, so we're talking, a long time ago. In the 1940s, he was a teenager. And he decided the Bronx was too quiet for him. So he wanted some action.
Nice.
And he didn't do what you guys did. But his version of doing something for fun and to exercise his creativity was to grow pot in the Bronx Park.
Nice.
Now, we're talking a public park. So they staked out, I don't know, an area hidden by some bushes. They used the water fountain that the kids used to water this crop. And then he said they were terrible farmers. 2/3 died. But at the end of the summer, they harvested this crop of pot, and he put buds into pickle jars, empty pickle jars, and hid them under his bed. But on Friday, his mother cleaned, he had to move the pickle jars. At the end of the summer, I asked, who used this stuff? He said, oh, the jazz musicians in the Catskills. Oh. So he got something like $200, which he split with his friend, and he said, was it worth the trouble or the anxiety? He hit the books, right?
Just like that.
You go back to the Bronx, Regis?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact.
To your old school?
I have a friend back there, freaking Finelli.
Say his name again.
His name is freaking Finelli. He's been a friend of mine since we were young kids, and he's still there, still living in the same house. He used to come to my show and see me. Unfortunately, his wife just died, but we go to a bakery there, right on Morris Park Avenue, and meet there and talk about the old days and all that.
How did he get the name Freakin' Finelli? I understand freaking. How did he get Finelli?
Pretty good, you know? You're not bad for an actor. No, Finelli was his real name, but I just thought it was funny. I gave it to him.
Well, but I didn't know you had a mother who was Italian.
Mother was Italian, father was Irish, and the Italian family won the whole thing. They would come down from Tuckahoe, wherever, every Sunday, and we would have dinner right there.
And you had a formidable aunt. What was her name? Aunt what?
Well, I had a couple.
Victoria?
Well, Victoria
was
my great aunt.
Oh.
Who owned the building. And every night, at 9 o'clock, she would go. I could hear her coming down the stairs from her apartment upstairs, and then you'd hear the door open to the cellar, and you'd hear her go down those stairs to turn the heat off. I don't know. I think but it's in your book, I think.
Yes.
Somebody was questioning my father. But what do you think about her? Wouldn't you be a little? He said, what did he say? Where's the book?
Okay. Well, basically, he said, aren't you afraid of, of
her going down into the dark
you said to him, dark stairs?
Yeah.
Isn't she afraid of going down the dark stairs?
Right, exactly.
And the answer was, basically,
if I was a guy down in the basement, I'd be afraid of who was coming down the stairs. She was a tough woman.
Oh, yeah, she really was.
Did you learn Italian from that side of the family?
Caffè and Beatrice.
Whoa. What
does anybody here know what that means?
What does that mean?
I don't know. Trying to get along with these guys.
Did you all have friends from different ethnic groups, or did you stay in your own group? Because you have several groups represented here.
No, I mean, for us, we grew up in an era where hip hop started. So it's kind of like, we were in the projects, we were we were wherever the music was, because this art form kind of also became the backdrop to a lot of what was going on in the hip hop scene. So behind the DJs and the lead jackets for the MCs. And so it was this whole other, And for us, it wasn't even about the money that we were making doing a lot of that stuff. It was the paint that was left over so we can go out and paint. So it was like, you know, but it's, you know, it's funny, like I'm the first American born in my family. So I always say this because it's true. It's like, as I was going to school as a kid and reading and learning to read, I could see my mother over, like, learning with me. I'm like, oh. So it was like, you know, we all learned in the house. Sure. So it took me a long time to realize that you don't spell Yankees with a J. My mother always said the New York Yankees. I was like, okay, the Yankees. So.
What about you, Regis? Did you mix different, like, did you know the Jews in the neighborhood? And
knew them all.
Yeah.
I used to deliver the Bronx.
What was the Bronx Home News? Was the newspaper?
That's what it was.
Bronx Home News. Yeah.
Right up Kruger Avenue to Pelham Parkway, and then around to the other buildings that faced.
You should have read a map to me.
What?
I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. Go right ahead. No,
I just told them the whole story. They loved it.
So go ahead.
So go ahead. But then the guy switched me to, I can't remember, what we would call inside the Bronx, way up north of where we lived. But anyway, I would go up there, and one day, the great boxer,
Jake LaMotta.
Jake LaMotta was there. He was playing stickball with the kids.
Really? Mm.
And so he saw me, and he said he wanted the post, and I have the post. I was going to put it in his door, you know, at home, but he wanted to see it right away, so I gave it to him, and that was the only, thing I ever got from anybody. He gave me a quarter. And I took it. And I still have it.
You know, Jake LaMotta reminds me, Mary Higgins Clark was saying, you know, she's a big Bronx booster person, and she said in her neighborhood, basically Jake LaMotta lived there, and she mentioned a few authors, and she mentioned, and then there was this guy, he said he was a counterfeiter. And we always wondered why his son had such a snappy roadster. And then we found out that he was on the 10 most wanted list.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. All kinds of people down the street.
Right. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. This is a wonderful, alive house because you're so obviously so in love with the Bronx as everybody on stage is. This would be, and as I am, and so this would be a great time for you to join the conversation with any questions you have or comments, or there are going to be some microphones out there, and we have people in other locations around the country who have called in questions, so we'll be getting questions from all over. Do we have mics ready? Oh, there they are, coming out in the aisle.
Well, they're doing that. I just wanted to say that it's been very touching because people have come up to me, not from the Bronx, and my hope is that this continues because in every one of those stories of childhood, one can recognize their own self in the striving and get inspiration from reading the stories of these 64 beautiful and interesting people from the Bronx.
Yeah, it's a great idea you had. It really was.
Thank you.
I know people who aren't, as you say, are not from the Bronx, but recognize growing up what the experience is and how people in the Bronx, over and over again in this book, see the importance of mentors, of teachers, parents who boosted them, picked up their spirits when they were low, encouraged them. And that's true for anybody in Kansas or any place else.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Only you get this special Bronx flavor of it, which is a delicious thing to see. It's just great. We got a mic set up, right? Anybody want to join in? Over here? Oh, I can't see, I'm sorry. Hi. Oh, can you go to a mic? I know you're close to us, but the folks in the back need to hear. Thank you.
People used to know I was from the Bronx when I said 200 Tighty Tight Street on the tight floor with the picture hanging on the wall.
Oh, thank you very much.
That reminds me, Alan, in I forgot Rick Meyerowitz is another artist, illustrator in the book. Excuse me if I didn't mention him before. But Rick has a funny conversation that he had a funny conversation with his father when he said, "Dad, what's the difference between a Brooklyn accent and a Bronx accent?" And the father said, "Well, in Brooklyn, they say, 'I'm gonna murder the bum.' Huh? And in the Bronx, they say, 'I'm gonna murder the bum.'" Said, either way, the bum's dead.
He's gonna go. Oh, there's a guy right over there.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I wanted to ask the artists, I was looking at those pictures and I see such incredible detail, and I'm wondering, how do you do that with spray cans?
If I've told you, I have to.
You'd have to kill me?
No, it actually, we use different size caps. Nowadays, there's special paint and special caps that you can order overseas, and you buy them in bulk, and so you have really thin caps. But again, it's just technique, and I guess.
And a lot of years of practice, again, this art form, there's no school for it. Yeah. So you really, really have to pick up a can and practice every day. So I've been practicing close to 35 years.
And one of these days he's going to get it right.
So, so the more you practice, the more you get details.
Definitely.
Like everything else, if you love what you do, you enjoy it. And that kept me away from, drugs, kept me away from robbing somebody for money. During that time, I just went into the subways with these guys, and we just painted the subways every day. And there was no stopping us. We hopped on the token buoy. We did it all.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. First of all, I want to just say, Mr. Alda, what a fan I am of yours and how I've enjoyed your work over the decades. It's just been wonderful.
Probably talking to you.
Probably is. Thank you, sir.
And as well, Mr. Philbin, absolutely.
Right.
My question is this. Growing up in the Bronx decades ago, at that time, the boroughs were somewhat self-contained. And I know a lot of people, like myself, grew up in the Bronx. We didn't know, I would go into Manhattan, but didn't do a whole lot there. And so I'm wondering if you would divulge, Mr. and Mrs. Alda, how you met, since, Mr. Alda, you indicated that you grew up in Manhattan. And if you grew up in the Bronx, how in the world did you meet?
We met through music. I was invited to somebody's apartment in Manhattan by a mutual friend of ours, and I came into the room, and there was Arlene playing the Mozart clarinet quintet.
Excuse us.
So beautifully. It took my breath away. She played clarinet. Still plays clarinet beautifully. And I was very shy, and I didn't say anything more than, "You were good."
I don't even remember that.
She doesn't remember that. I made a real impression. So a couple of months later, we were invited back by the same woman to a dinner with about 12 people. And I noticed at dinner she was laughing at my jokes. Arlene was laughing at my jokes, and I was really fascinated with her. And I didn't know quite what to do about it, So the woman who had invited us had made a rum cake, and she had set it up on top of a refrigerator in the kitchen to cool, but the refrigerator shook while it worked. So the rum cake slowly made its way to the edge of the refrigerator and fell on the floor, and everybody heard splat. And Arlene and I were the only two people to take spoons and eat it off the floor.
Wow.
That's
how you fell in love.
Soulmates.
If you eat cake off the floor together, that's it for life. They got these websites that try to match people up with questionnaires.
Doesn't work, huh?
All you do is you throw a cake on the floor, see who goes for it.
Very good.
Over. Thank you.
I was back at Bronx Science for my 50th reunion.
Wow.
Good. And looked at the wall and pictures of 8 Nobel Prize winners.
Right.
How many of them actually grew up in the Bronx? Did you know that? Did you interview any of them? Because I know kids came from all over the city through an entrance exam to get into Bronx Science.
Unfortunately, none of those Nobel Prize winners are in the book, but there are 2 great scientists in the book. One is Mildred Dresselhaus, who's the Kavli Prize winner, expert in the world on nanocarbon molecules. The other is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's this great astrophysicist, head of the planetarium, the American Natural History Museum. He went to the Bronx High School of Science. Mildred went to Hunter. She went to Hunter College, as did I. Yeah, so it's our loss. I don't know how many of the Nobel Prize winners were actually Bronxites. But unfortunately, that's for maybe the second book about the Bronx. Any other questions?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here tonight and reminiscing with us. And I have a request, but before I get there, I want to put it in context. My request has to do with what your memories are in the 50s in the Bronx. Because I grew up on Hunts Point in Lafayette in what Alan called Fort Apache, and it was Fort Apache. It was before the produce markets came in. There were gang wars. I personally was a victim of a holdup, and if the guy had a nervous trigger finger, I wouldn't be here today. But I went to Morris High School. I followed Colin Powell by a number of years. It was a wonderful time in the Bronx. It was multicultural. The people I hung out with, there was an African-American, a Puerto Rican, Irishman, 2 Jews, and me, a hybrid, a Juwapi, because my dad is Sicilian and Italian, my mother Romanian Jew. But we had a great time. We played stickball and stoop ball and box baseball and Johnny on the Pony, Scully in the street, all of that thing. So my question is, a request is, if anybody up there can remember the 50s and talk a little bit about that. I had friends on Rochambeau Avenue of Marshallou Parkway. But that was paradise to us, because where I grew up, it was a hellhole. Yet having said that, I had a wonderful childhood. I spent many days in Yankee Stadium. I was privileged to have a tryout with the New York Yankees when I was a kid in 1961, and I played in Yankee Stadium. Those are wonderful memories. But I'd like to hear if any of you have something to tell us about the 50s prior to going up in smoke, prior to becoming Little House on the Prairie, if you remember that, 41st Precinct and Simpson Street, Intervale, Kelly Street, Elder Avenue. It was a terrible, terrible area, but we got through it because we persevered. So can you give us some insight into the 50s?
As far as I recall, a lot depended, it's not just the decade when you say the 50s, it really depended on the neighborhood. For instance, Chaz Palminteri would probably echo your sentiments exactly. And he was in the Belmont section, and basically he witnessed a murder. He was 11 years old, and he wrote about it. He did a play about it, and he wrote about it, did the movie A Bronx Tale. That's a true story. But when people say to him, weren't you traumatized by witnessing this murder? He says, no. I mean, I saw it, I witnessed it, but people don't understand. The neighborhood and the families were so close that they overrode everything. So he said, then he did go on to say that, however, a psychiatrist did tell him, well, it probably did affect you because, look, you did a play about it, you did a movie about it, and you think about it all the time. So, I mean, I don't know any more than that, but that the survival instinct is enormous. And from what you say with the kids playing together, that you managed somehow to get through that time.
You know, people are always asking, Arlene, what was it about the Bronx that made all these people have such vibrant lives? Is there anything in your life that you remember that couldn't have happened anyplace else but the Bronx that made you who you were?
Survival.
Survival. So you were tested by the times you lived through.
In a way, I mean, when you're 16 years old and you're a victim of of robbery with two guys with guns, I was a clerk in a pharmacy. They tied me up hand and foot on the floor with a gun at my head. And two people came in the middle of the two customers came in the middle of the holdup, and I prayed. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed to the Italian side and the Jewish side. I was not too particular at the time. And as I said before, if he had an itchy trigger finger, I would not be here today. And I'm 72 years old, and I'm happy to say I survived, and a lot of my friends survived because we did persevere. Right. And it was a community. And the group that we grew up with, we played sports together, as I mentioned. We had no grass fields. We played stickball in the streets. And when the cops came around, we threw the bats under the car so they would take the bats away. I mean, that's what I remember. And it was still, having said those negatives, it was a wonderful childhood.
I mean, even though, like, for me, I remember there was a time where, if you look back, our block had everything on it because every parent parented everyone else's kids. So there was a lot of, you know, if someone saw you doing something, they went and they dragged you to your mother. Your mother was like, hit him next time, and you're standing there like, what are you talking about? But the thing was, it was a community looked out for each other's kids. And you know, we lost a lot of that with what's going on now. But back then, I mean, that kind of like made us who we are, because there's a sense of, you know, you knew the store owner, you knew the workers in the store, you knew the guy in the meat market, you knew, you know, like they would send you to we had a FECO, and I remember going to measure rice, cups of rice in this little scale. And, you know, we would have to go get the beans for the coffee, you know, grounded. And, you know, this was all things that it was normal every day, but you knew everyone.
Arlene, did any of this, was it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. There was a lot of feeling of community. People would sit out on the sidewalk to get cool in the evening, and they'd talk and gossip, and they'd keep track of one another. It was like going to the village well. But then that changed at a certain point.
Well, you know, going out in the street was not just an activity, it was a social gathering, because everyone met everyone else, everyone knew everyone else, and a lot of information and gossip was exchanged, and this was a real community bond.
So when did that change?
Oddly enough, when air conditioning came in and people stayed in their houses and not outside, and when television came in and people gathered around the television set, that community bond was a different one.
And isn't it true that up until television came in, somebody would open up a window and put a radio in the windowsill?
I mean, there were all kinds of
to hear a boxing match or something like that.
The whole community audience.
You know, you asked about the Bronx, and it is a tough question to answer, because there's another borough with a B that claims certain things.
Maybe it's the B part of it.
However, the Bronx always, or a lot of the time, had a winning team, and everyone identified.
You're absolutely
but nobody
right.
loved their team better than
Yankees,
Brooklyn.
We're winners, you know.
Brooklyn loved its team as much as you could
but
love
they
a team.
left at a certain time.
They left.
Don't forget. The Yankees are still in the Bronx.
That's it.
So you're talking about the Yankees. I thought they said Jankies.
So you don't know what we're talking about. Thank you.
This previous discussion practically answered my question, but I did want to point out that the stories that you tell, the people in the Bronx tell, are all so benign and so warm and so seen through rose-colored glasses. And I'm wondering in part whether they are the rose-colored glasses of the people or of Arlene Alda. but also I wanted to contrast it with Brooklyn, where I come from, that we had the same stock of people who came from the Holocaust and from miseries of one sort or another. And I felt there was much more rancor and less happy memories than of the Bronx. And I wondered why that was.
The Bronx
now
tap water.
That's interesting. I'm not being a sociologist or a journalist or a historian. I can only go by my gut feeling in this. But I know that whenever I meet someone from the Bronx, there's a camaraderie that is extraordinary. It's
I couldn't get over once we met Jonas Salk a couple of decades ago, and he and Arlene, just having met, went off in a corner and talked for an hour about streets in the Bronx. Subway stops and...
Well, you know, I couldn't talk about medicines.
Of course not.
We found common ground in the IRT subway.
But by the way, there are some dark stories in the book, and that leaven the nostalgia. It's not all nostalgia. Some of it is very tough.
It's not a book of nostalgia. It is a book of remembering, but it's also a book of truth. Yeah. And that truth is sometimes dark. And in terms of Brooklyn, I don't know about the rancor so much. Our friends from Brooklyn seem pretty jolly to me. I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I must tell you that I'm old and I grew up a lot of years ago. But there used to be a program on Saturday mornings for the girls, for the children, and it was called Brooklyn versus the Bronx. And they would have two girls every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock arguing pros and cons of Brooklyn.
Oh, wow, that's something. I never heard of that.
Never heard of that. That's very interesting.
Very old.
Thank you very much.
But you have a good memory.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm from Manhattan, and I was a Giant fan. Now a Mets fan. But I especially urge, this is a fantastic book, and I urge people, especially who are not from the Bronx, to read this book. I learned a great deal about it. And my question to the author is the following. What surprised you most in writing this book? You had certain impressions of the Bronx as you went into this book. How did you come out from the book? What really startled you?
There were startling individual stories. The darker ones were startling. Also, the funny ones were startling.
What about Regis?
Regis was the most surprising. But even when, when I heard Milton Glaser's story, it went on from his family to his going to Music and Art High School, and ultimately he was talking about art and the meaning of art, and it was very beautiful. And I didn't expect that. And what came out was something that is so true, that I feel is so true. He said, "You don't choose art. Art chooses you." And it really resonated very deeply. But in terms of surprises, overall, outside of the individual stories, I was surprised at not the differences between the generations, but more the similarities, and how there was that bridge over these decades of all of us being the same. And that was very beautiful. And that was something I didn't know, that I couldn't predict. So I think that was a big surprise.
Sure. Thank you for your question. Thank you. Who's over here?
Hi. The sense of community here is palpable. I wish I were from the Bronx. But as someone who hasn't spent much time there, it'd be great if each of you could give me, as someone who's going up there for a day, a place that's special for you. Can be somewhere to eat, a park, sort of place that I would want to go.
Oh, great. I would say the first place is to come to our office. We are located in the Bronx still. You know, like the other guy had mentioned, we in Hunts Point by Lafayette and Monida, so we still there. Like now that we started and lived, we there to stay. So you're welcome, you know, TATS CRU, you know, that would be the first place you could come, and from there I will show you different part of the neighborhood to eat. They got Spanish food, Chinese, whatever you need, you know, it's there, you know what I'm saying? We show you the artwork, you know, the stuff that we do every day, you know, but you got to call before coming. Gotta call.
For me, I think someplace definitely to see is Pelham Bay Park. Me and my family, we would go there for picnics, and then, like, growing up, that was like our little Hamptons or something. It was like, you know, it was a big vacation getaway, just taking the 6 train all the way up to the end. So.
Oh, me? I mean, there's just, for me, there's just so much. There's different things. Depends on what you want to do. We have nature, we have animals, we have rivers, we have parks, and I don't know. All of it to me, it's just been, you know. And I still enjoy being from the Bronx, and I couldn't even direct you to one place because there's just so much that I like, you know.
And the Yankees.
Well, if you like Italian food, there's a great Little Italy in the Bronx. Authentic.
On Arthur Avenue.
Arthur Avenue. Even though it's a tourist destination, it's real. And the people there are real, the stores are real. It's very down to earth. Terrific place to go. If you want something like the Bronx Botanical, well, it's the New York Botanical Garden. It's known throughout the world as being tops, and it's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And the zoo is right across the street.
How about you, Regis?
Well, I think I'm going to put you in touch with Freakin' Finelli. You're in for a hell of a great day.
I'll add one thing, even though I'm not from the Bronx, and I think we ought to close on this because we've been here a long time. I don't want to try anybody's patience, but I know with this crowd we could go till midnight if we wanted to. The one thing that I would suggest is that you go to the Botanical Garden in the Bronx, and you walk down the main path, and a little bit over to your left, you'll get to a bench that I gave to Arlene for her birthday last year. And on the bench is a plaque that says, Arlene Alda, just a kid from the Bronx.
No kidding. Is that right? That's a great story.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
You guys haven't told us that.